Good afternoon, and welcome to StockMarketJobber.com. Now picture this. You're on a sailing ship, you've been on it for months. You're coming up to this beautiful coastline that's kind of crooked along, it looks like a cove, and you look and you see this Indian, and he's out there gesturing to you to come towards the shore. He wants to help you. And then your wife is like, oh, he's ripped. He says his name is Squanto. You can only wonder what she thinks.
All right, hello everybody. Thanks for tuning in to our newsletter here. I just wanted to feature Squanto because it's a pretty amazing story. If it's true, I mean, some historians think it's like, you know, embellished, but regardless, one of the things I know for a fact is true is that when the Pilgrims got here, they were shocked to find open land and someone who could like basically be the interpreter. So here at the Stock Market Jobber, we're not just about stocks and markets. I love history and I love talking about it. And I think it's not just benign. I think if you understand history, it helps you understand the markets because markets are all about psychology and uh, emotions. Now, the names have changed, the people have changed, the companies have changed, but you know what hasn't changed is human nature. All right. So, why are some price levels more important than others? Well, this really goes back to human emotion. I mean, it seems a little bit hard to believe, but we'll look at it a little bit more. But support and resistance levels, the importance of a support and resistance level can stay intact for some time. Now, a level that was support can become resistance. Why is that? You can see it on almost any chart. Well, it's because of buyer's remorse. Charts are not just like reading tea leaves. Charts are, if viewed correctly, charts are an illustration of what's going on in the market. What are the supply and demand dynamics? And as traders, that's what we want to know. What's going on with supply and demand? If things are in equilibrium, well, there's no money to be made. It's not going to move. If things are out of equilibrium, there's going to be a move, and that's what we're looking for. So levels that are support can become resistance because people buy shares, and if the price goes lower, a lot of those people regret doing so, and they decide to get out if they can break even. So they tell themselves, all right, well, I'm going to place my sell order at the same level I had my buy order at. If there's enough of these sell orders, the level that was support turns into resistance. Levels that were resistance can become support because of seller's remorse. It's the opposite. People sell, and then when the price goes higher, a lot of the people tell themselves, hey, you know what? I made a mistake. I'm going to buy my shares back, but only if I can get them for the same price I sold them at. So they place their buy orders at their selling price. And if there's enough buy orders, it creates support. So the best traders understand this. I can tell you, as someone firsthand who traded for two of the greatest money managers, basically, no doubt in our time, but arguably in history, I know firsthand what goes on in that world, and this is what the traders pay attention to. All right, so let's move along a little bit here. This is just a little bit of an overview. We're going to go explore these levels more and know what to look at. Now, I don't know why this says 117. I guess I didn't update it, but this is the week of 123. So my apologies, but ignore that. This is 123. This is up to date.
Who was Squanto? Squanto, also known as Tisquantum, was a Native American from the Patuxet tribe who acted as an interpreter and guide to the Pilgrim settlers at Plymouth during their first winter in the New World. We don't know much about his early life, but he was sold into slavery to begin with, but he escaped and eventually returned to North America in 1619. He then returned to the Patuxet region, and he became an interpreter and guide for the Pilgrim settlers in Plymouth in 1620s. He died November 1622 in Chatham, Massachusetts.
All right, here's where we like to start our analysis at the S&P 500 because this is the most widely followed benchmark on Wall Street. And there's a lot going on here that can teach us about market principles. First and foremost, well, guess what? Some price levels are more important than others. Sometimes we know why, sometimes we don't. Check out this 390 level for SPY. Now, SPY is the ETF that tracks the S&P 500. Notice how it was support, meaning sellers couldn't find enough demand, or buyers, they had to offer their shares out at a discount. That forces a downtrend. We get to this level, all of a sudden the tide turns. There's enough buy interest or buy orders that they can absorb all of the supply. The market, some of these buyers start to worry that there's people that are going to pay more, so they're not going to be able to buy their shares. So they decide to up the price they're willing to pay. That's what drives an uptrend. This is not because of some fundamental news story, which is what the media would have you believe. The 98% of the time when a market's moving, it's just because of investor perceptions. But let me not get caught up on that. So this was a support level that converted into resistance. Why is that? Well, buyer's remorse. A lot of the investors who bought here regret doing so when the price goes lower. They tell themselves, gee, if I can get out of this at break even, I'm going to. And they place their sell orders at the same level they had their buy orders at. If there's enough of these sell orders, the level that was support becomes resistance. Now we see the opposite. What was resistance becomes support. This is seller's remorse. A lot of people that sell regret doing so when the price goes higher, and they tell themselves, you know what, I made a mistake. I'm going to buy my shares back, but only if I can get them for the same price I sold them at. So they placed their buy orders at a level that was resistance. So much here is like just the essence of what you should look at in charts. For some reason, some price levels are more important than others. We don't know why, but we don't need to know why. We don't need to know why Elm Street goes up around a tree and, turns left and then turns right. We just need to know where the road is. And the analogy is that if you're trading, knowing where the levels are is like having a map of the market. Okay? So for some reason, 390 is important. I don't know why. I don't know why it's not 392 or 388. It just is 390. But you know what? I'm not going to question it. I just see it and I accept it. Just like I'm not going to question, why did they dig a road here and make it turn there? So support becomes resistance, resistance becomes support, support becomes resistance, resistance becomes support. Why did we have these big moves up today? Well, actually, I don't know what's going to happen today because the market hasn't opened yet, but I would think there's going to be a little bit of follow through. And it's just, it has nothing to do with COVID or inflation. It's just investor perceptions. Big move of an important level. Notice up here, resistance around 410. Resistance was there, resistance was there. 410 is an important level. So if we get back up there, we'll probably have resistance. All right, I want to move along because I don't want to bore you, although making money is not boring. So if you're bored, I don't know. Maybe you should go somewhere else, dudes. All right, I'm just being a little angry, but whatever. Now look at this, XLK, toying with this important 129.50 level. Resistance became support, now it's resistance. This is the technology sector. There's 11 sectors that make up the S&P 500. And technology is the biggest, so this is something to watch. If this sector can decisively clear this important level, well, there's a good chance the broader markets move higher. It's going to be one of the things we're watching this week. And remember, just come check in, stockmarketjobber.com. This is what we talk about. If you're looking for the secret of success, well, I think I can actually teach you. I mean, it's not about having a magical trading system. It's about understanding what the markets are and about understanding how these charts are an illustration of psychology. Now here we have the healthcare sector. This is the second biggest sector. Notice how the level that was resistance has converted into support. Seller's remorse. Investors sold. A lot of them regret doing so when the market goes higher. They tell themselves, I made a mistake, I'm going to buy my shares back, but only if I can get them for the same price I sold them at. So they place their buy orders at the level that was resistance. If there's enough of these buy orders, support forms, and that's what happened here. All right, we're not reinventing the wheel here. We're not curing a virus. We're not doing AI. We're just looking at market principles. As a matter of fact, a lot of the AI funds that are so quantitative, their performance sucks. The best human traders still outperform the best quantitative programs. Now look at this, support down here around the 120 level. Support here, support here. Why is this important? Well, if healthcare is trading lower and you think like, oh, gee, where should I buy Eli Lilly or where should I buy United Healthcare? Well, you're going to get a lot of insight by watching what the sector does, because ultimately those stocks are going to follow the sector. Gets down to 120, it was support before, gee, maybe it's time to buy.
Born around 1580 near Plymouth, Massachusetts, Squanto, also known as Tis Quantum, is best remembered for serving as an interpreter and guide for the Pilgrim settlers at Plymouth in the late 1620s. Historians know little about Squanto's life. A Pauxitac Indian, born in present-day Massachusetts, we can only assume that he loved lobster. Squanto is believed to have been captured as a young man along the Maine coast trying to harvest lobster in 1605 by Captain George Weymouth, who had been commissioned by Plymouth Company owner Sir Fernando George to explore the coast of Maine and Massachusetts and reportedly capture Squanto. I don't know why he was specifically looking for Squanto. And he did it with 4 other Pentecost Indians. Because he thought his financial backers in Britain might want to see some Indians. Well, that's a bad deal. Weymouth brought Squanto and the other Indians to England, where Squanto lived with Fernando Jorges, or Georges, who taught him English and hired him to be an interpreter and guide.
All right, I got to speed it along here because my producer is telling me I'm taking too long, but whatever. People aren't going to get bored if they're making money, so why don't you just chill out? All right, I put him in his place. Just hang out. Now look at this, the financial sector. Where do we run into resistance? At a prior resistance level. Levels that are important tend to repeat themselves. Why is it not 37 or 38? I don't know, but I don't care. I just know 35.90 is the level to watch. Here we have buyer's remorse turning a level that was support into resistance. People bought, the market went lower, a number of them decide, man, I made a mistake, I want to get out. I don't want to lose any money, so I'm going to place my sell order at the same price I bought at. And guess what? The level that was support turned into resistance. Buyer's remorse can turn support into resistance. When we look at charts, what we're looking at is a graphical illustration of investor psychology. Notice how clear this resistance level is up here too. All right, I'm just going to keep moving on. Once again, I mean, I know it gets redundant, I know it gets boring, but this is how you make money, understanding which levels are important. Where did the industrial ETF kind of stall out? Oh, gee, the same level it was back here. So had you bought here and you were like, oh, gee, where should I sell? You just look back for a form of resistance level. Now we're down here. Is it time to buy? Maybe. We're at a former support level. It's levels, levels, levels. Levels, trends, and momentum. That's the secret. Okay? It's not having, some secret model that you found in the woods, or, you got abducted by aliens, and when they were done anally probing you, they decided to give you the secret of trading. It's and I'm not saying that ever happened to me, but it's understanding which levels are important. That's the secret. And at stockmarketjobber.com, we keep things simple.
Squanto, now fluent in English, returned to his homeland in 1614 with the English explorer John Smith, possibly acting as a guide, but was captured again by another British explorer. Talk about a rut and turn of luck. Thomas Hunt, and sold into slavery in Spain. Squanto escaped, lived with some monks for a few years, and eventually returned to North America in 1619, only to find that his entire Patuxent tribe dead from smallpox. He went and lived with the nearby Wampanoag tribe.
And we don't really talk about UFOs, but we do talk about ghosts a lot. A lot of our students say their houses are haunted, but that's another time. Now look at this. Clear resistance at 52 for the communication services sector. Potential breakout. Notice how we've gotten above this resistance level. This isn't just symbolic. This is a graphical illustration that the investors who created the resistance with their sell orders are out of the way. They either left the market, they canceled their orders. So this could be a very bullish sign. Once any market you pull supply out, it sets the stage for things to go higher. If buyers come into the market, they got to pair. Like think about it. Like pretend you're going into Home Depot and you want to buy a shovel, okay? Then there's no shovels left, and there's all these people that want to buy shovels. Well, people want shovels, so guess what they're going to do? They'd be willing to pay a higher price to get a shovel, right? You might have gone there and say, I'm going to buy my shovel for 20 bucks. There's no shovels left, and I got to clear my driveway of the snow. You know what? I'll be willing to pay 22. And someone else says, you know what? There's only one shovel left. I'll be willing to pay 23. And that forces the price into an uptrend. So what we're looking at here is supply and demand. It's that simple. It doesn't need to be complicated. The best traders focus on these simple principles. Here we see the staple sector, very clear. Resistance here became resistance here. Support becomes resistance. Remember, buyer's remorse. A lot of investors who bought here regret doing so when the price goes lower. They say, I made a mistake, I went out, but I'm only going to sell if it gets back to my price so I can get out at break even. So that buyer's remorse converts support into resistance. Notice how the 74 level has been important. We broke down through it. So when something breaks down or trades below support, it tells us that the investors who created the support with their buy orders have left the market. That tends to be bearish. That's why we had a big move lower. All right, let's go see what's next on the. Let's see what's next. Now this chart here is just, perfect for teaching about supply and demand. We have resistance turned into support. We have support turned into resistance. We have resistance turned back into support. This illustrates how important it is to know which price levels are more important than others. It's one of the main secrets of trading. If you go into a market and you don't know which levels are important, I just don't see how you can make money. And I've been doing this for 25 years. And fortunately, I've been, fairly successful. And now at this point in my life, I want to teach people. And one of the things that really upsets me is because there's so much misinformation in the news and on the media, trying to teach secret systems and this or that. It's like if, we focus at Stock Market Jobber, we focus on levels, trends, and momentum, and investment psychology. Those are the secrets. You don't need to be a chart guru to see what I'm seeing. Resistance became support, support became resistance, resistance became support.
In 1621, Squanto was introduced to the Pilgrims at Plymouth and subsequently acted as an interpreter between the Pilgrim representatives and the Wampanoag chief Massasoit. In the fall of 1621, the Pilgrims and the Wampanoags celebrated the first Thanksgiving and reaped a successful harvest. The following year, Squanto deepened the Pilgrims' trust by helping them find a lost boy and assisting them with planting and fishing.
Utilities, support at around 69 became resistance, resistance became support. Okay, resistance, resistance. It's just understanding which levels are important. I know it's like I'm going on and probably boring you, but guess what? The fundamentals is what you need to focus on if you want to make money. Look at our basic materials sector. You don't need to be a chart guru to see 81 is important. It was support here. It was resistance. Okay, remember, buyer's remorse. People buy, market goes lower. A lot of these buyers regret doing so. They say they're going to sell if they get out of break even. They place their sell orders at the same level that was support, and it forms resistance like here. Support became resistance. Resistance became support. Resistance here became resistance. And now the 81 level is support again. Real estate sector. You know, you can see it on almost any chart. Resistance became support. Resistance remained intact. Knowing that's why you need to subscribe to Stock Market Jobber, is because we talk about which levels are important. You know, it's not like you know, we're perfect or anything, but this just puts the odds in your favor. Knowing where these levels are, like I said, it's a map. And if you go to a town and you've never been there before and you don't have a map or you don't have a GPS, you're probably going to get lost. And I think that's a great analogy for understanding the markets and understanding why chart reading is so important.
Squanto's unique knowledge of the English language and English ways gave him the power. He sought to increase his status among other native groups by exaggerating his influence with the colonists and even going as far as to tell them that they didn't want him. He would have the English release the plague, which he claimed that they were holding in storage pits below their homes. Embroiled in politics emerging between the settlers and the local tribes, Squanto died of a fever in Chatham, Massachusetts, circa November 1622, while acting as a guide for Governor William Bradford.
All right, so you've probably seen, or hopefully you've seen Squanto. We like to talk about history a lot here. This isn't really financial history, but it's very cool. If you want to learn more, I think this is a really good book. Nathaniel Philbrick is a great writer. And if you read this and you don't know much about history, I think it's going to shock you at how different it really is. And it's also an example of how real life is more interesting than the greatest fiction. All right, so I'm just going to end up here with my, you know, yay me, blah, blah, blah. The marketing people tell me I got to promote myself. Whatever, I'm just a person. I'm going to die one day, just like you are. And hopefully when I face the big man upstairs, I can be proud of my life. But I traded for Mario Gabelli. I traded for Steve Cohen, two of the greats. You know, Cohen owns the Mets now. Gabelli is probably the smartest man I've ever met. I was a market maker. I went to NYU. The most important thing on this page to me is rescue dogs and guinea pigs. All right? Okay, everybody. Because, you know, dogs and guinea pigs, they're lives. And, you know, I mean, if you can rescue a life, it's going to make you feel good. Okay, everybody. That's it. Thank you for tuning in, and I will see you soon.